Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Somebody Should Have Told Me podcast, where we talk about our convictions, our career, and our coins. And today I have a special guest, and we are doing a career spotlight. I am joined by Attorney Christian Wolford, and he is going to share with us his journey through law school and his current career as an attorney. So we're going to get into all the things and everything that we wish somebody would have told us in hindsight about being a lawyer. So if you are in law school, you're an aspiring attorney, or you know someone who is, please share this episode with them. Clap it up in the studio audience for Christian.
Thank you, Majesty.
Yes,
Glad to be
okay.
here.
Glad to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Okay, so you went to Thurgood Marshall. So tell me about even when you felt like you knew you wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah, so interesting story. I didn't have like the traditional oh, I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a little kid type of story. So my story is a little unique. I have a background in finance and banking. I've always wanted to be a businessman, and so ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be the type of guy to wear a suit. And so that's all I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to wear a suit. I wanted to look nice. I wanted to be presentable. I didn't have a lot of people growing up to look up to that had that type of a job where they dressed up every day in suits and tried to be extremely professional. And so that's something I strive to do. So I didn't know the law was the route. Um, I was always an athlete, so I wanted to get into sports agency. So that's kind of what got me into thinking about being an attorney. But it wasn't something that I just drove me to be an attorney. But whenever I got into undergrad, I saw law actually was a cornerstone, like that type of pivotal crossroad between being a good business person, being able to see the liabilities of companies, and being able to kind of connect the two. And so that's kind of why I really wanted to get into law. But I wouldn't say it probably went back to me wanting to be a sports agent, being a young kid playing sports. So I would stick with the sports agent answer.
That's good. What did you major in undergrad?
So in undergrad, I majored in finance and banking. So I did a dual BBA. I went to Sam Houston State University, about 45 minutes, hour out of Houston. So a good school, about 30,000 students. I didn't know what I wanted to do in undergrad off the bat, so I went to undergrad with the mindset I wanted to do marketing. I thought
Okay.
marketing, you can sell something, you can market something, that'd be good. And I was like, wait, marketing is a little bit too broad. And so I said, let me get something that's going to be able to be beneficial in the long run as far as being able to hone in on one skill. So I went to finance. And then also I started to go in banking as well.
Okay. That's good. Okay, so that's interesting because when I was younger, I always used to play office lady. So right now, I work I work as an executive assistant, so I understand exactly what you mean. Where you're like, I could just see something along the lines of professionalism. Okay, so then did you go straight through, or how old are you now?
Yeah, so I'm 28 now. So I didn't go straight through. I had one gap year
Okay.
between me graduating in 2020. Was that 2020? 2020, it was fall 20, no, it was fall 2019. And so if you know anything about the year of fall 2019 to 2020, we
Yeah.
had COVID that hit, I want to say it was like February 2020. And so when COVID hit in February, I was just like, me trying to go to law school even at that point in time it was just a rough time. And also I knew myself. I didn't see myself as a learner that could be outside the classroom and learn. I knew that that was something that was going to be required of me because the world was just shut down at the time for the most part. So I did a gap year, but then it was so beneficial because I ended up working. I did some consulting for small credit unions and banks, and then also did some things for some small businesses. And so it was extremely beneficial for me to take that gap year. I think
Okay.
that taking a gap year is extremely important for people that don't know what they want to do. And also it gives you a taste of the real world because having that real world experience will actually help you when you get to law school and being able to get those internships and things. Sometimes, coming straight out of undergrad, it's not a disadvantage, but I would say that you don't have the same perspective as somebody who has, a little bit more experience in the real world. And also, some people don't just take it as serious. They think it is just like, oh, I went to undergrad and then, I'm just going to go ahead and go to law school. No, it's
No.
not the same. It's just not. And so it gives you that kind of perspective, like, let me take it a lot more seriously because, like, I seen the real world and I like, this is where I need to be, and so it's kind of that thing. So I took a gap year, and it was very beneficial. I'm grateful for it. It really helped me prepare for law school.
That's really good. Okay, so how did you know? So you went to Thurgood. Was there ever a time where you had to be like fully remote while you were doing classes?
No, we were never fully remote. So when we
Okay.
started, there was a period where I believe COVID tried to make a comeback, and so there was a period where we kind of did some hybrid, but there was never a time we were fully remote. Texas Southern Thurgood Martial School Law did a really good job of honing in on the fact that learning in a in class setting is extremely important,
Mm-hmm.
very practical. And so they also have a lot of old school, professors, going to HBCU, they want you to have that type of experience. And so they did a good job of trying to have a hybrid where, we want you to be here, but, if we can get you out of the classroom to keep you guys safe, we'll do that as well. Then there's some distance learning as well. So they did a good job of trying to do both and try to balance the two, but we weren't out, a lot, if that makes sense.
That's good. So when you were leading up to starting law school, how did you know all of the things that you needed to do to be able to start school, like
I
start
didn't.
law school?
I didn't. So, man. So I've told this story to a couple of mentors. I don't mind sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
So my story is extremely unique because so most schools their admission cycles start early, like in November, October, right?
Yeah.
And they start getting people to start submitting their applications and start their process of being able to be admitted to these law schools. And then some schools their deadline to actually apply start some of the bigger schools cut off like February and March, and then it trickles on down. And so there's very few schools that allow people to apply until like the closer towards like the summertime. So for me, I was taking LSAT. I was not a good test taker, straight up. I was
Okay.
not, and so I was not the best test taker. I didn't understand the science behind studying, and so I'm just giving a little backstory to answer your question. And so I wasn't the best studier. So I didn't do as well on the LSAT. I took the LSAT 4 times.
Okay.
So I took the LSAT, I want to say it was December of 2020. Didn't do as well as I wanted to. And then I ended up signing up for the June LSAT. If anybody knows how the admissions,
June.
exactly. And so I was talking, I had everything already sitting and everything. And I was talking to the Dean of Admissions and, just kind of communicate. And I was like, hey, she was like, I think you're good. I think you should take the LSAT again. And I'm like, okay, and I'm thinking, I'm talking to people, and they're like, this is June, right?
Yeah.
So I had the gall to take the LSAT in June. Took the LSAT in June, did a really good job, got
Okay.
admitted in July. And
Wow,
if anybody
that's crazy.
knows, law school starts in what?
In August.
August. And
Yes.
so therefore I got admitted into July, like mid into July. I got admitted to a couple law schools at the time. Like it was, TSU Southern, a couple other schools. And my point in saying that is that I didn't have much of a time to kind of prepare for it. It was just kind of like, you got
This is
admitted,
it.
which way we going, how are we moving to, how we doing it, and so a lot of people got into law school early, like February, March, had all this time to, progress and talk to people and get into group chats with people that were admitted. I had none of that. And so for
Yeah.
me, it was just dive straight in. How bad do you want it? Do you really want to be here or not? Yeah, I'll pack up my stuff, start packing my stuff up and started getting ready to move in and do what I had to do to get there and do everything I said I was going to do. And so I told God, I said, hey, if you get me in, I promise I'll do everything I can to stay here. And
I
so that's
love
what
that.
happened. And I just kind of took it on. So I don't really have a lot of advice for people that are, I do now, but I'm saying at the time I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just kind of hopped in there and just, hey, thank you guys for getting me in, and just kind of just hit 45 and said, hey, no turning back.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I applied to Thurgood, but I was flipping out because I was going to take the February LSAT, but then I pushed it back to April. So I'm flipping out because April, but you did it in June.
Right. Very
And
unique
now,
situation. Would not
yeah.
recommend.
Yeah. And then for those that are listening, law schools only start in August. There's like one school here that does a spring semester, but you can only start law school once a year. So if you're
They have a
not,
part-time program too.
yeah, if you're not on track with that, then you have to wait another year. Okay. So very interesting. So interestingly enough, I had met you the first time at like a Bolsa, like a pre-law Bolsa event.
Right.
like probably when I first moved to Houston, and you were telling me to take the law. First of all, it's a journey, okay, with me in this law school thing. I have been at it a long time. I'm still believing God,
Absolutely.
okay? It's a
It's a journey. It's gonna
process.
happen in due time.
Yeah. So you're the first person to tell me, because at that time I had taken the LSAT like a lot of times. I was almost at the max. So the only reason I'm not at the max now is because they're not counting the LSAT Flex, which was the 2020, against the lifetime limit. And
Gotcha.
then the first time I ever took the LSAT was in 2018. And I have a piece of a clue now of what I'm doing, but I
Okay.
didn't have remotely any kind of clue back then. So that score is like falling off. But you were the first person to say, like, keep taking it and keep taking it. And that to me was like unheard of, because I'm like thinking by then I had already taken it like 3 or 4 times. So I was very scared. But then later I started listening to like LSAT Demon podcasts and things like that. So there are people who are like T14 and like Harvard and Yale that will max this thing out, trying to get the score that they want. So very
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. Let me just say this. So when taking the LSAT, the LSAT is not a competency exam. It's not about who's the smartest person. And people think that, and they say, "Oh, I didn't do good on LSAT. I can't be smart." Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So historically, the LSAT was created as a barrier to keep certain people from getting into law school. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
be clear. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so the LSAT exam is created to allow people to try to formulate some of the same habits they may have in law school, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's like I said, it's more so about strategy, right? And
Okay.
so when it comes to the LSAT, one thing I've learned, and I wish I would have known this. You said what you wish you would have known, right?
Yeah.
If I wish that I would have known that it was about strategy and not about competency. Christian, what are you talking
Okay.
about? If you go, and this the same thing will apply when you get to law school. You know exactly what I'm talking about when you get to law school. Like, oh, I see what you're talking about.
Okay.
There's only so many ways they can ask a question, right? And there's only so many ways that a question can be worded. So if you break down these question types and then go through and say, hey, this is how they're testing it, this is exactly how they word it. If they say this word and this sentence and they do it this way, you gotta look for patterns. If you can do it down and break it down that way, and try to go at it from a strategic way rather than saying I'm smart enough to answer it this way, you have a way better chance of scoring that way than you do just trying to take it raw and just trying to use your mind. So being able to do as many practice questions as possible, writing down why you got it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and identifying the question type. And then, so next time they ask a question and change a word or the scenario, you'll be able to identify what the problem is or what type of question type it is and be able to answer it efficiently because you know what they're testing, not because you're super smart, but because you've seen this question 100 times. And so I wish that I would have known that ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this is a game and that if you can be able to break down how they test it and like formulate, exactly how this game works, you'll be able to master the game because there's no way somebody should be able to get a perfect score on a test that's not, you know, that's not like, about knowledge. It's not about competency.
Yeah.
It's more
Very
so
true.
about a game. But if you can identify the type of game and what they're testing, and this, that, third, and they do this every time, it's this type of question, and you can answer the question in the time setting, you're fine.
Did they still have games when you were taking the test?
Yeah, every time I took it, they had logic games.
Okay.
But this doesn't just go logic game. This goes for what's reading comprehension and
Mm-hmm.
for what's it logical reasoning.
Huh?
So it
Yes.
goes the same thing as well. Like, I mean, whatever the question type, it's the same thing across the board. Take logic games off the table. It's the same thing when you read a passage. The theme is every time is right here. It's right, stuff like that. Which I wish I would have known ahead of time, but they don't teach. We don't have people like us teaching us that stuff. So.
Yeah, very true. Okay, so that's your journey leading up to it, starting school. So, how was your experience at Thurgood? You're just going in like kind of last minute, And it's so interesting because I just feel like I'm on edge because I feel like that could happen to me. Like, I think what school starts in like less than 2 months, and it's like I'm either going or I'm not. And that is like a life changing yes or no. So I feel like I'm either gonna have to be ready very quickly or just chill out and try again and re up or whatever the case may be. So, how was your experience in school?
So in school, it was a really great experience going to HBCU as an experience like no other. I went to PWI for undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
and so going to a school where you have individuals that look like you that are striving to be, well accomplished and to meet, the bar, where people previously like us were really not able to kind of reach these kind of heights. It was extremely important for me to be in that type of environment, but it was extremely hard too. I'll be honest. It wasn't a cakewalk, and that's the thing that it teaches you how to think. And I'm grateful for the process because it teaches you how to kind of decompress and kind of let things come to you, but then also still operate at a high level and be able to think at a high level under stress and to make decisions that you're going to have to make when you become an attorney, because you're going to make some really hard decisions that really can affect people's businesses, lives, a lot of money, and to whom much is given, much is required. So I think it does a really good job of preparing you for that, but it's not easy. Very much long nights. I stayed up. I worked. I got up every morning at 5:30, and didn't leave the library till 12 o'clock at night. My first year of law school. So I mean, I worked. I was literally studying all day, every day. I mean, and it worked out. I did really, really well in law school, but that was just how dedicated I was, because I was scared that I wasn't going to do well. I
Yeah.
barely got there, so I was like, shoot, I'm gonna give it all I got. I'm like, worst case scenario, it won't be because I didn't try my hardest and give it everything I had. I told
Absolutely.
God one thing. I said, if you get me in there, I'll do everything I can to stay there. And so I did. I tried to do that to the best of my ability.
Amen to that. And it worked out because you are Magnum Cum Laude.
Yes,
Did I
yes,
say that right? I hope I
yeah.
did. It's
Magna
very
Cum Laude. Yeah,
it's very important. Top of the
yeah.
class.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all those early mornings and late nights really worked out for you, as we could see today. Okay. Something I was about to say and I forgot just that quick. Okay. So how did you work through law school?
Yeah, I worked pretty much mostly through law school.
Like a regular
Um,
job?
so let me tell you. So my first year, I still had my consulting business. Once again,
Okay.
I stopped at a drop of a dime. You got to remember.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I got in June, I really got accepted in July. I didn't have much time to kind of to phase out, because I was really in one of the credits I was working with, was really at a bad spot, because there were some things going on there where I had to really step in, and my company had to really do some things there that was very fundamental. That was a lot going on. So I had to kind of ease myself out of that situation and kind of help them be able to be as self sufficient as they could in light of circumstances, without going in detail. But I was still doing stuff there and giving some time there, and so I couldn't just. Sometimes you can't just cut off business right then and there. And so I was doing some things like that, and just trying to close off and get rid of that business at the time. But then still going to school, and then of course my second year of law school, I did work. I worked during the summertime. I worked pretty much every semester after my second year. I don't recommend working your first year, but second and third year I do recommend.
Okay. So you're supposed to start doing like internships your 2L year, correct?
Summer going into your
So,
year. Yeah.
okay. And then after doing your internships your 2L year, is that kind of like solidifying your post law school employment, or how does that usually work?
Yeah, good questions. So going into my at the end of my first year, so at the end of your first year, you'll be trying to get a job to go into your summer, and then you want to try to get a job to go into your second year summer, and then of
Okay.
course you go. Yeah. So a lot of times people will definitely want to try to get those internships where they can kind of transition from a summer intern or clerk into an actual long term employment. For me, I just tried to dibble and dabble in so many different areas because I wanted to see what I liked and what I didn't like. A lot of people wait till they get to be an attorney, or they've tried one area and then they're like, oh, I don't really like this, or whatever, but they don't take the time to like really see what they really like and what they don't like. I was blessed enough to work at a M-Law 100 law firm my first summer and my second summer. I did split with a Fortune 500 company as well.
What does AmLaw mean for the people in the back?
Okay, yeah, American Law 100 is it's pretty much a conglomerate that pretty much puts and rates these law firms from a revenue standpoint, but then also quality of law firm. They rank them, and
Okay,
so there, if somebody says it's like law school, let's say T14, top 14 law schools,
gotcha.
M Law is going to be the bigger law firms with high revenue and
Hmm.
efficiency. And
Okay.
so I worked at a top 20 law firm with my first year, my second year,
Hmm.
but I split my first year with the Fortune 500 company as well as an energy company. And so it was a good experience. And like I said, a lot of times people do transition, from those positions into your post employment, and it just depends on you what you want to get. If it's what you want to do, if it aligns with your passion and long term goals and your whatever your plan is, then it makes sense. But sometimes it doesn't always align, so it just depends on what you plan on doing after you graduate.
Okay, so the times that you did your internship, is that the same as what you're doing now?
Yeah, so
Okay.
so I did an internship my summers, and then I also did internships during the school year. And so during the school year, so during the summertime, we call it either a summer associateship or just a summer clerk. And
Okay.
so during the school year, you can be a fall or spring clerk, or you can just be an intern as well for a law firm. I did the same thing. So I also interned with TSU with the general counsel's office. I also intern with the entertainment attorney. Shout out to my boy Balaji, one of the biggest entertainment attorneys here in Houston, in
Okay.
Texas, doing a lot of big things. And then I also intern with the biggest black-owned law firm in Texas that I'm with now, Stevens Reed Armstrong. And so, I mean, when I was with them during the school year, I gave myself options to be able to say, do I want to go in big law? Do I want to go here? Which one would be best for my career? And that's why I decided to go with Stevens Reed Armstrong. But I did intern with them during the school year for multiple semesters as well.
Okay. So with these internships, do they pay as an
Oh yeah,
intern? Okay.
yeah. So not to get into too deep in numbers,
Hmm.
AmLaw 100, the big people know. I don't know if people know. So they break it down like this. So when there are firms that have over, I want to say it's 100 attorneys or more, they kind of consider those big law. Big law not always pay. They don't always pay the same, but some of the top big law firms they pay an exponential amount to first year attorneys. So we're talking about over $200,000 a year, coming out, as a first year attorney, which is really, really good as a first year attorney because you haven't been taught anything. You're just kind of wet behind the ears, right? But they pay you as a first year associate, as an intern. So for those 10 weeks, you're getting paid like a first year associate if you're at a big law firm. And
Okay.
so, I mean, you're talking about $4,000 a week type of situation. So you make a good substantial lot of money. Now, if you're going to more of a smaller firm, mid-sized firm, they can pay as well. It just depends on what their budget is and how they have it set up. But I mean, you don't usually work for free. Just put it that way. So it just depends on how big the firm is, what their budget is, how much they want to, input into that experience for you guys. They want you to come on full time. They'll probably put a little extra, different things of that nature. So it just depends on the firm. But big law firms is kind of set how they have it set up.
Okay. So when you start, like as an associate, let's say postgraduate, is there any type of like contract that you have to sign when you're starting a firm in terms of like a commitment of how long you have to be at these firms?
Yeah, sometimes you do. So what some people do whenever they become a summer associate,
Hmm.
they pretty much sign a contract that says, hey, we'll come on, but that's only if they've taken a scholarship. There's
Okay.
sometimes people take a scholarship, like a post bar scholarship, that they can kind of use to pay for their school and and then go finish school and then go into the legal profession. Those people have to sign a contract that says we've given you the scholarship to go for school. and then after this you'll have 2 years to be with us. Now, if you just are going straight just out of law school or just a straight summer associate, no scholarship or anything like that attached to it, typically it's just a regular contract, at will employment. Depends on how you set it up. Now, there are some firms that say, hey, this contract, you got to be with us for at least a year or two. It just depends on how your firm sets it up. But also, you're an attorney at that point, right? So
Mm-hmm.
guess what? You can negotiate. So you can
Okay.
negotiate, hey, this says, it says 2 years. I don't know if I want to, be bound for 2 years.
I
I'm
don't
not
know
saying I
if
don't
I
want to
want to
be
do
for.
all that. No.
Right, exactly. So you have to, at that point, you're an attorney. So you go in there and negotiate. You go in there and negotiate the salary, all that good stuff if you really want to. Some are willing to budge, some willing or not, because it may be a set thing because, they just across the board. But to go in there and not negotiate, maybe doing yourself a disservice and maybe showing that you're just willing to accept whatever they give you every time.
Mm. Very interesting. I pride myself on being a good salary negotiator. I do all
There you
right
go.
if I do say so myself. So I encourage everybody, especially Black women, negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. So is it more firmer at like the AM100 that they're more like set in their ways, or is there more room for negotiation at the middle?
It's definitely more room for negotiation at the middle, um,
Okay.
because you got to think about it. I mean, a lot of times people either start at the smaller law firms because they don't want to go in big law, or they
Mm,
come from the bigger law firms because they want to go smaller. And
okay.
so it's a lot easier to negotiate with the mid-sized, smaller law firms. The bigger law firms, can you negotiate? Yeah, if you've been practicing for 5, 10 years and you're a dog. If you're like that, then it's a little different. But we're talking about first year associate, right? There's not much negotiating to do at a bigger law firm for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more law school question. Um, what is the curve? Like people are always talking about the curve. What does that mean? How does that work? Start from the ABCs.
Yeah. So law schools typically, this is not every law school. Not every law school has a curve, to be clear.
Okay. Does Thurgood have a curve?
Thurgood does have a curve. I mean, it's typical, but
Okay.
not every law school has a curve. I don't
Okay.
believe, I don't think Harvard has a curve.
Okay.
So just to be clear, I don't even think of Harvard. I mean, when I was interning, there was a couple guys that I met that went to Harvard, and I don't believe they even get great. Let me not say I'm not 100 sure, but I know their grading system is extremely different. Like I don't even think they get an A
Yeah.
B type of. It's totally different.
I've heard of that. Like some
Yeah,
schools don't give like I think C's or something like that.
I don't
Like
think they give grades
oh,
at Harvard. That's what I'm saying. I don't
Harvard.
think I don't think I don't think it's like that. I think it's a total different type of system. But I didn't go there, so I can't really. I don't want to talk too much about that.
Okay.
But for the average school, most schools, whenever they bring in an incoming class, let's say if it's a class of 200 people, right?
Okay.
Um, it, typically, what happens is whenever let's talk about just classes and grades in general. So let's say you have a regular class of 200 people. They'll break you up in sections, and then in each section, let's say if it's 4 sections, you have 550 people in one class.
Mm-hmm.
When you have 50 people in one section, let's say in one class, the teacher has to grade your work. When she grades your work, technically speaking, not everybody can get an A. Not everybody can get a B. Not everybody can get an F. And so they have a grading system to where it's the grades are kind of already allocated, but it's no wiggle room. So, for example, they may only be able to give 1 A or 2 A's or 3 B's, no matter how you construct it. But there's an
Why?
average. There's an average that they have to stay within to keep the curve to make it make sense. So it's a curved grading scale. So
Okay.
that person that gets the highest score, let's say the highest person gets an 80, he
Mm-hmm.
gets an A, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's say the next two people get, a 78, then if you only give 2 A's, then one of those people that have a 78 will have to get a B, even though the other one that got a 78 got an A. If
And
that
this
makes
is
sense.
just because, just for the sake of
No, no, it's not just because it's more so because, so let me fully explain. So it's more so because if they held you to that standard that, on that let's say there was no curve. If the highest grade is an 80, then the highest grade would get a B. And then if you got a 78, you would get a what? a C. Right. And so the curve, it helps, but it hurts as well. It helps the top, but at the bottom it trickles down and it hurts the bottom because of the fact that, it has to bottom off. And so if you have an 80, let's say if the grade is 80, because most of your tests are going to be essay, right? But let's say if you were to get an 80 on the exam, if the highest grade is an 80, you get an A, it makes it so that you give out a certain amount of A's, a certain amount of B's, and a certain amount of C's and D's. And so it's kind of bell curved. But the curve overall, if your overall grades throughout the semesters, if you were at the bottom of the class, you can curve out because you didn't meet a certain requirement of your grades. But it's across all of your grades. So the curve, not only do you have to have a curve on your grades, but you can have a curve of your class. So your class curve is going to be your accumulation of all your grades. To say if you had a 2.5, let's say the curve out curve for the class may be 2.0, right? And
Right.
so the people that are below the 2.0 would curve out because that's just the curve out point. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So you have
So
a curve for the class for your regular grades, and then you also have a curve for your class. Two totally separate things.
so this is basically you're graded comparatively. So not on like an objective scale,
No, it's
but this is
subjective. No, it's subjective. It's just that the way that they give you the grade is different. So
okay.
objectively, we'll give you a 80. It's just
Okay.
that the 80 isn't an 80, it's an A. The
Gotcha.
78
Okay.
is a B.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I only can get like I said, let's say out of 50 people, let's say 15 people are going to get B's.
Uh-huh.
So no matter where you fall, the top 15 people are going to get A's and the B's, and then the bottom part of it are going to get C's and D's. No matter what the score is, does that make sense? So you're not graded based on your score. You're graded based on where you fall in the class and alignment of your class.
Okay. So there are people who just essentially can't keep up and it's just what, too bad for them?
No, 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 no. So what the good thing about the curve is that the average person, if you're in the average point, you're going to get a C or a B plus, whatever the curve is. So if you're in a B minus curve, the average person is going to get a B minus, and the people above the B minus curve is going to get a B plus, and an A. And then if you're below the curve, you get whatever. But like I said, if the test is extremely hard, what it does is prevent people from, if there's an 80, and everybody falls below it, that the highest grade you can get is a B. You know what I'm saying? It prevents that, but it also hurts if you're on a C curve. The average person gets a C, which is not good either. So it can help and it can hurt, if that makes sense.
Yes, it sounds stressful, but you're making sense.
It's really complicated. It's really hard for me to explain it, in an interview. But if I could break it down like on a piece of paper, it would be a lot more helpful. But yeah, it's very complex. But you would understand if you were in it. It's kind of hard to explain in this.
Okay. So fast forward to now. Okay, well, actually, one thing I want to ask you about when you were talking about the employment law offers and things like that. So let's say a company offers you like the bar scholarship and things like that. Or is that company expecting you to work while you're studying for the bar?
No, no, most no, no, a job would usually typically don't does won't ask you to work during the bar.
Okay,
Right, while you study for the bar, while you take the bar.
so they'll like pay, I guess, pay you like regular wages and then you're studying and then you've essentially committed to come back to them once
Yeah.
you've finished
And,
or passed the
and,
bar.
let, and, let, and let me clarify. When I said scholarship, I wasn't referring to most of the bar scholarship. I'm sorry, I meant like a scholarship during school. A
Okay.
bar scholarship, some law firms actually help pay for your bar, and so
Okay.
that's not uncommon. But the scholarship that usually people sign a contract for is typically during, like, when they're in school, a scholarship to help pay for their school. Sorry about that.
Okay. Did you apply for a lot of scholarships when you were in school?
Oh yeah, yeah. I applied for a lot of scholarships. I got a lot of scholarships. And I would encourage anybody that is like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to pay for school and different things like that. Um, I wouldn't say I would bank on scholarships,
Okay.
but I didn't realize how many scholarship dollars there were when you got into law school rather than they were when you were trying to get admitted. When I was trying to get
Really?
admitted, I was like, where are the scholarships at? When I got into law school, I was like, hmm.
Here they
And
are.
so, and yeah, and so, it's competitive, of course, but that goes back to being diligent in everything you do, being a good person, networking. It's all about who you know, because there's going to be some scholarships you get just because just you know the right person.
Okay.
But there is good scholarship money out there. I did a fellowship with LexisNexis. I wrote an article with them, and they gave me a hefty scholarship. But there are things like that where you can get in fellowships and different things of that nature where you can do some writing and different things. You just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but apply, ask for scholarships, go to your financial aid office, go to your career and professional development office to help you get the scholarship opportunities and just apply. And you will get scholarships and it'll be extremely beneficial. Same thing for when you get ready to take the bar. There are bar scholarships too.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not saying count on them, but man, those scholarships, dude, they really helped out. And it was extremely beneficial, and I'm grateful for everybody who had the opportunity to afford me a scholarship.
That's good. So was it time consuming when you had to apply for these extra scholarships?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It was time consuming. Um, Depending on if it was a scholarship that you had to write an essay for, or depending
Mm-hmm.
on if it was something that you just had to meet a certain requirement and just to make an application, and submit that. It just depends, and so you kind of just have to pick and choose. But I tried to make time if that meant staying up a couple hours for an opportunity to win $5,000 or whatever the situation may be.
Yeah,
I mean, like I said,
sure.
the chance of me not doing that is just very slim. And like I said, of course, I didn't win every scholarship. I
Hmm.
went quite a few. I did, and I'm grateful for that. But also, a lot of people just didn't apply, and so that was my blessing. If y'all don't want to apply, I ain't gonna fight you.
Yeah.
And so I was grateful that a lot of people sat on the sidelines and said either one, I'm not qualified, or two, this is too much.
Mm.
I said, well, it ain't too much for me. And I'm gonna try to give it every chance I can, and so that's how that worked out.
That's really good. Okay, so fast forward, everything works out. You make it through your bar. Did you have to take the bar more than once?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
No, I
one and
didn't.
done.
Thank God. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, very hard exam, but yeah, God really got me through that. So
Okay. So now you're a fancy lawyer. You made it. You survived law school, all the wonderful things. You graduated with the bells and whistles. So now you're a practicing attorney, and your areas of practice are employment matters, commercial disputes and litigation, general business, real estate, and personal injury, correct?
correct.
Okay. So out of that, what's your favorite?
So I have a background in banking and finance, and so I just love business. And so, I mean, it's hard for me to get away from the business side of things. So a lot of what I do is I advise a lot of clients on general business matters, but a lot of times when they get sued, we're there, and so we do the gamut. So labor and employment, like you said, whenever there's an employee that there's a dispute, and so we handle the gamut from there from on the labor and employment side. So we see that. But then also there's a lot of commercial disputes that we see, and so we'll take those on and help out when it comes to those commercial disputes. So the commercial side is typically my favorite. What I did not put on there is because I mean, it's kind of like a given. I do a lot of contract reviews and things of that nature as well to prevent our clients
Hmm.
from getting sued.
Okay.
And so that's another thing we do. But we do a really good job of representing our corporate clients and also municipalities as well.
Our brother's serious when he says finance, okay?
I'm old school. I'm old school.
Yeah. Okay, so as an associate, are you responsible for going out and getting new business and new clients?
Good question. Yeah, no, so not responsible, but one thing that you have to realize and that you have to keep in the forefront of your mind whenever you're practicing is that one day you do want to have your own book of business. One day you do want to be able to bring in clients and be able to be that point person. And so I've definitely taken the ownership to kind of do those things. But any good practitioner would tell you, hey, you know, your first couple years, your job is to learn how to practice the law and to focus on being the best attorney you can be. And
Okay.
so I would always suggest that your first couple years now, there's if there are opportunities present themselves, cool. Stay in touch with people that you think may be potential clients. Stay in touch with people that you think and different companies that you think would be someone that you could, represent. And if the opportunity presents itself, by all means, go get that. I've definitely brought in some clients in some cases to the firm because of just connections and networking. The people, everybody needs an attorney for whatever the reason may be. And so I've been grateful to have those type of relationships. But the onus is not on me to go out and to go get clients and different things of that nature. I've been grateful to go to a firm where they have a book of business and some really big clients to where if I don't do anything, I'm going to have work.
Okay.
But I definitely want to start, making sure that I build my own book of business, building those relationships to where, at the end of the day, I have my own clientele. And so that's something I definitely work on. But my goal right now is to be the best attorney I can be.
That's good. Okay. So going into where you are now is so far, because how long have you been practicing?
It's going on a year now.
Okay. So you're fresh into it. Is being a lawyer what you expected thus far?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I'll give a two-part answer. So when I was a kid and thinking about being an attorney, no. And even before I got to law school, no.
Okay.
I didn't know what to fully expect. But everybody always asks you, do you like to read? Do you like to write? If you going to be an attorney, I hope somebody's asked you that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my time, I do a lot of reading and writing. I will say I didn't at first want to. I don't think I even told you this. I didn't want to go into litigation. I didn't want to litigate at first.
Really?
I really wanted to do transactional law. When I was at the big law firm, I was doing transactional law. I was, doing nothing but transactions and doing mergers and acquisitions. But that was on the oil and gas side and doing renewable energy. And
Okay.
so being an athlete, you like the ability to be able to go and get the fight. And
Yeah.
so I wish I would have known earlier. I wanted to litigate, but being able to go to court, I'm very competitive. And so being able to go to court, going in depositions and different things of that nature makes you feel like it's game day. And
Yeah.
so that part of it is really cool. There's no better feeling and that rush that you get when you go into the courtroom and you
Yeah.
go in front of the court and be able to make your argument and be able to kind of advocate on behalf of your client. That there's no better feeling than that. So that part of it, I will say, is really really cool, and that is what I thought it would be. But a lot of what I do is behind the desk, being able to talk to clients and do a lot of work behind the scenes and be able to make sure I can represent them well. So yes and no, but I would say the what is being a litigator or what it's cracked up to be. Yes, when you get to the courtroom, when you get those
Okay.
opportunities, it's nothing like it. It's a feeling that you will never forget, and it's a feeling that you kind of yearn for once you do it, because it's like it kind of gives you that adrenaline rush. You're like, man, let's go ahead and get it, and you're just competitive. And whether it's emotion, whether it's just going in there for a scheduling conference, whether you're going in there just to be able to advocate on behalf of your client, it's just a good exhilarating feeling. And don't let it be federal court. Oh, it's a whole different feeling, and so it's pretty cool. I mean, I've enjoyed it so far, I would say, but it's definitely different than what I thought. 'Cause I didn't think I was going to be a litigator, but now that I push myself out of my comfort zone to do it, it gives me that thrill and rush. I don't think I would have got the same thrill and rush if I was just doing transactional.
Yeah. I feel like I am instinctively a litigator. Like my
Yeah,
mom always
you're
tells
a
me,
litigator. You're a
why would you
litigator for
say
sure.
that?
I'm talking to you. You're a litigator.
My mom always says, she says, you need to get something for that.
Yeah, you're a litigator. You're a litigator. You do well. You're very well spoken. You have the discernment to be able to listen. Listening is very key whenever you're a
Thank you.
litigator.
Thank
You'll
you.
do fine.
I try to work on my listening skills. Okay. So, employment litigation, speaking to that, because that is what, as it stands right now, I feel like I want to practice. I always knew I wanted to litigate something, but over the last couple of years, employment litigation is just so fascinating to me right now, and it's been beneficial in my life. I done had to litigate myself through a few things,
There you
you
go.
know.
Okay, understood. Understood.
Um, but when I envision myself on the um like on the side of the employee, and it kind of sounds like your firm right now is more on the side of businesses. So talk about any part of that, and how that
Yeah.
works for you.
Yeah, 90% of times we're on the side of the business. Or sometimes do we have some cases where we get so many calls every day from individuals that call and have different type of claims. Mostly what we see when we do stuff for businesses would be, it's mostly like a wrongful termination or some type of wrongful act in the workplace. There has been some times where we represent there has been some times we represent companies when they have an FLSA can't claim, so Fair Labor Standards Act. So it'd be,
Okay.
when it comes to being paid, and a lot of times it's restaurants where people aren't being paid tips or they haven't been, adequately compensated for, the time that they've worked and a lot of the tips that they've received. There's, a specific federal law that
Mm-hmm.
kind of governs how certain businesses should be paying these employees. And so particularly the area of restaurants, you see a lot of these restaurants being sued or individuals being taken advantage of because they got tips and they making a certain amount of tips and different things that nature. Not trying to get too deep into the law, but that's kind of the things that we see. But then also we get a lot of just cases where people are just suing companies for whatever may be going on internally. And like I said, we represent municipalities as well. So, you may get somebody on a city council, that's suing for different things, or, you may get all types of different things that, have to do with, being employed through an entity or being able to hold a position and then being removed or being disadvantaged because of whatever the case may be. And so it's very interesting. I would say, it keeps you entertained because it can get real messy. Employment law can get really messy, man,
Yeah.
extremely messy. They talk about people's families and oh my god, what is going on here? And so it keeps you entertained, but it's a good practice. I like it. It keeps me going. I would say that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so when you talk about like wrongful termination and things like that, or discriminatory things, like what are some of the grounds? Like, so for me, not to get too much of my business, but I've had an experience with wrongful termination in Texas and in California. But I believe in, if you're listening out there, of course you are, because you can hear us. But I believe that you need to have a standing relationship with an attorney before anything ever goes wrong. So when I had taken a job in California, my instinct when that happened was to call my Texas attorney because I still had my place here. But she was like, the laws are way more in your favor in California. So like one of the things I distinctively remember is that, like, in California, one incident is enough to constitute a hostile environment there. But in Texas, it sounds like we really don't have much. So if a person is, and this is not legal advice, but if a person is like wondering, like, on what ground should I reach out to any kind of employment attorney, uh, what are some of the things that they might, be able to use to support them?
Yeah, once again, this isn't legal advice. This is just talking. This is just
Yeah.
talking friendly. But so employment law. So over the last couple of years, they've changed up the requirements and how hard it is to wrongful termination. So one, if you haven't been fired, let's just be clear. That may be a problem. Some
Huh.
people come to us and say, they have a claim for certain things, which you still made. Let me just be clear. But a
Okay.
lot of times, if you have not been terminated, that it may be too premature of a claim. So that may be something to look at. Not saying that you can't work somewhere in a hostile environment and be compensated. Let me just be
Okay.
clear. So that's one thing. If you've been terminated, that's one thing that is huge to be able to prove a wrongful termination case, of course, that you were terminated. And then when it comes to race and when it comes to gender and different things of those nature, if you're a part of a protected class of people,
Mm-hmm.
Being a part of a protected class is more so, like you said, when it comes to gender, when it comes to sex and different things of that nature. You have to be able to show that you were discriminated against because of that thing,
Mm-hmm.
not because you are that thing, but because of that thing, right?
Okay.
So just because you are African American or you're from Asian descent does not mean that was what they were discriminating against you against.
Mm.
You may be an African American person, yeah, but that's not what they were discriminating against you. And
Okay.
so
Yes.
you just have to make sure that that is the reason why you were discriminated against, and you can prove that. And so that those are two of the main things that make sure whenever you have an employment situation is that you're documenting everything. Make sure you write everything down, and make sure that what you're being discriminated for is actually the cause, and it actually caused you to be terminated. And
Mm.
so it has to be a causal link between the two, or if there's some type of retaliation, right? You have to be able to show that they retaliated against you for doing this, and you have to be able to show all those things. And so if you feel like that is something that's you, make sure you're documenting everything. Make sure you're doing everything you can to build a case up. And like I said, some people get one situation, they're like, oh, I'm suing, whatever. Document, take time, and be able to build up your case, because a lot of times, one, it's really really hard to get these claims brought against these companies because everybody feels they have a wrongful termination or wrongful some
It's
type of
always
claim.
wrong when you're fired.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody has a claim, and so they make it really hard to bring them. And so you'll have to bring a claim to the EEOC first, right? And so the EEOC will ask you all, what's the cause. And I always recommend getting an attorney involved in this process too, because what you put in your EEOC claim will also be able to, it's only what you can put in there that you will be able to put in your lawsuit as well.
Mm.
So if you don't claim it
Interesting.
in your EEOC claim, you can't claim it in your lawsuit.
Okay. That is
And
really
so
good.
so just know that ahead of time, like, make sure that you know, if you're gonna file a claim, make sure it's very well spelled out. Go to EEOC. If it's for wages, go to TWC, Texas Wages and Commission, and be able to spell out all those things and do it right. And if you don't, it can hurt you on the back end, and you can lose a claim because of that.
Interesting. So, okay, so if you're on the employer's side of things, what are some of the bounds, like you're saying, of documentation that it's like, oh, you shouldn't even have company information, because I'm imagining, let's say, like I'm the employee and I've done wrong, but I've been BCCing myself on the crazy things that you guys are saying to me, and then you as a lawyer, would you come and be like, um, you didn't have authorization to send this email or to screenshot, or what are some ways ethically that a person could document what's happening with them?
I mean, unless you're having communications with the attorney, that's attorney-client privilege. I mean, emails should be able to be discoverable. So there's nothing wrong with document emails. That's the thing. That's what get people in trouble every time. Text messages,
Yeah.
emails, communications. Stop writing stuff down. Stop putting stuff in emails, and
Uh-huh.
stop chatting about stuff. If you're going to do something like that, that's wrongful. Do not do it and document it, right? But
Yes.
as far as if it's discoverable, if you can document those things and use those things all day long, text messages, emails, all that. I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't. But unless you're having a conversation that is privileged, which means that it's either through somebody who has some type of fiduciary relationship, like an attorney or a doctor or something like that. If that relationship, if there's no attorney-client privilege, in that case, then I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to use it as evidence. Depending, unless it's like a negotiation, that's a different conversation. We get into all the nuts and bolts of it, but yeah, all that. They need to be careful. They
Interesting.
shouldn't be sending that stuff in the email. They just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I used to work in data forensics and e-discovery. So, like with that, like let's say if you just typed the email and you were like, "I hate you, I hate this job," and then you backspaced it, that stuff is like still recorded and can still be like retrieved through the cloud, like all of your keystrokes, even if you didn't send it.
Right. Right.
Because my old job, we used to do investigations for that kind of stuff, like federal
Absolutely.
investigations of like, oh,
Absolutely.
you thought you was gonna send it, and then you know, as soon as you bloop,
Yeah, you dirty dog. You don't know nothing about nothing. And then you just say, you know what? I'm gonna be civilized. I'm gonna just back.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You just gotta be careful, man, when you do stuff like that because it's just everything. Everything is being tracked. Everything is being stored in some type of you know out somewhere or it can be retrieved for the most part. And so that's the thing that be getting everybody caught up is these emails and these text messages. Honestly,
Yeah.
it always comes down to that.
Yes, very good. Okay, so what about now you're a lawyer, now you're official, you're fancy. What is your weekly or workload, your work life balance? What is life like now for you as an
Yes.
attorney?
Yeah. Good question. So extremely busy.
Okay.
Extremely busy. So I have a routine. So I typically get up about 5 o'clock every morning. Well, 4:30, and
Okay.
I'm in the gym by 5:30 every day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, do devotions like that all in the morning, and then I go into my workout routine, and then get some breakfast, and then I'm usually in the office by 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning.
Mm.
And so usually I'm in the office, wake up, go through my emails, see if my paralegal has me, looking at what I have going on for the week, and then prioritize for the week what we're going to do. If we have any hearings, if we have any depositions, any trials, anything like that that's coming up, we want to know ahead of the week what we're looking at for the week.
Okay.
So I kind of plan out what I have for the week going on Monday. I look at it on Sunday too, but typically when I get in the office, I do that on Monday and just kind of work through everything. And then if I have any client calls, I kind of plan those throughout the day. But depending on how busy the day is, I typically work till about like 7 o'clock, depending on how that what the day's looking like. Um, and
Seven
then
o'clock.
typically that's what I do. Honestly, yeah.
Okay.
You want me to? You want to know the
Yeah,
truth? I'm
no,
gonna tell
this
you.
is your truth, your story.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So I typically work till like around 7 or so at the office, and then go home, eat all that good stuff. If I have anything else going, any calls, anything like that else, personal stuff, I handle that. But then wake up and do it the next day. So that's pretty much what I do Monday through Friday. Now, of course, I try to put in lunches or dinners with mentees, mentors. Like I said, I'm on the Houston Lawyers Association on the executive board, so
Nice.
I have board meetings there. If I have any summer associate meetings, different things like that, I try to interweave those throughout my day or afterwards, and so that's kind of what I do. I mean, there's always a happy hour you can go to too. I don't drink, but every now and again, I go to happy hour and stuff like that too.
It's good. Okay, so do you have to work on the weekends?
You don't have to do anything. No, you don't have to. So my job is extremely flexible. So I
Okay.
mean, I can come in as late as I want to as long as I get my work done. If I'm not, if I don't have anything already scheduled, like client calls, if I don't have any, any meetings or anything like that, I can, come in as I please. But it's just my firm. We have billable hours. I don't know if you know about billable hours. So we
A
have
little.
billable hours. So typically, if you don't work, you haven't billed, and you have a requirement that you have to meet every quarter, and every year. And so you want to reach a certain amount of hours, and then get your work done. So I just typically go in around that time because it's just kind of how I am. I'm kind of like a robot, and so that's kind of how I do my stuff. But some people come in later and they stay later. Some people come in early and they leave and go home. And, it just depends on how your schedule works. I don't have any kids or anything like that. So, I mean, it's just how it works for me.
Do you think a lot, like if you were working at, I guess, even if you were to work at a smaller firm or even a drastically larger firm, that your workload or work life balance would be heavier and more contentious? Because I hear a lot of people just say how draining big law could be, but then I'm also imagining
Yeah.
it's probably the same way on the smaller end if the staff is not, I mean, not the same, but you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
it's
That's a good question.
not
It's a good
dispersing.
question. If you're a solo practitioner, I mean, you probably working just like any other type of entrepreneur would. You're working
Mm-hmm.
all the time. The problem is that you're probably not doing legal work. You're probably doing a lot of other things too.
Okay.
You have a lot of other administrative things that you don't have to worry about, when you at a mid-size or a larger law firm. There's so much stuff you don't think about until you start a law firm that you got to consider. And so they're probably working, but a lot of that's probably not even working to the client. It's probably doing stuff and bill because you have to, do the billing part of it. You have to do, the administrative stuff, filing everything. You have to do everything. It's a lot. But on the big law side, yeah, big law, they work a lot. They work a lot. And so they pay you the big bucks, but they also work you a lot. So their work, I mean, it's typical. This is not a Christian take. This is just a law thing. Typically, big law attorneys work a lot, a
Yeah.
lot, and they have a high billable requirements too. But a lot of times, you may work a certain amount of time, your billable hours may get cut, or they may, you know, not count. So you run the risk of like having to try to meet these hours, and they work a lot, and they have high volume cases that have really high stake cases. So
Hmm.
you got to work a lot.
That's good. Okay, so last question about your firm. For you as an attorney, what structure do you have in place that supports you and your workload? Do you have like a paralegal and a legal assistant? Do you have one or the other? Or
Yeah,
how do you support your own workload?
yeah, paralegal and legal assistant.
Okay, nice. Awesome. Okay, so also I saw um the is it the Black Law Brunch?
Backlog brunch, yes,
That's you.
yes, yes,
Nice. Okay, I've heard of that before as well. I just didn't know that was your
yeah,
thing. So do you
yeah,
have anything to promote to tell the people that they can follow
yeah,
you, support you,
yeah. So
if they got a case?
yeah, I'll tell you this. So for one, so the Black Law Brunch is something we started in law school.
Mm-hmm.
Me and a couple of my business partners, but also at the time we were law students,
Nice.
study partners. We wanted to bridge the gap between law students, people that wanted to get in law school, and the attorneys, because there wasn't a lot of times we were able to get in those spaces where we could talk to them and be able to, you know, get the knowledge that we needed, but then also just be able to loosen up a little bit and see what it's
Yeah.
like to be in those realms, because it just wasn't, especially as an African American attorney. So that's why we created it. We started it back 2023. So we've had four Black Law brunches, and it's grown. And the last one we had, it was over 1,500 people. So a lot
Wow.
of people. Yeah, and so it was a really good time. And so this year we'll be doing it. We do one annually in August, and
Okay.
so we'll be starting to promote for that pretty soon. Like I said, if you are a law student, if you are someone who's aspiring to go to law school, or is looking to do any work or type of relationship building with the legal community,
Mm-hmm.
especially as an African American person, this is a great place for you to be able to come and network, hang out, get your mimosa. A lot of times we have bottomless mimosas, and so
Okay.
that's something that we do, and get some food and be able to hang out. And so we'll do that in August. So yeah, and like I said, I'm really big. I charted the pre-BOSA, pre-Black Law Student Association at TSU, and so if anybody's an undergrad at TSU, get involved and try to see what it's like to be able to be a law student by going through that pre-Black Law Student Association, because it's a direct pipeline to go to law school. And so that's what it was created for. And so if you are an undergrad at TSU, make sure you get tapped in with that. But yeah, I'm an open book. If anybody needs me, I'm not too far. Anybody can reach out to me. I'm pretty accessible for the most part. At my firm, we do a lot of things. We do labor and employment. We do general business. We have a construction arm, and then we also do personal injury as well, more on the bigger side of personal injury, but we do have that as well. And so we're the biggest Black-owned law firm in Texas. And so
Nice.
if you guys need representation, we do a really good job of that, and we'll love to represent anybody who has a case that needs representation. The law firm is Stevens Reed Armstrong. I thought I said that right, but the law firm is Stevens Reed Armstrong, and so yeah, that's pretty much it. But I'm just a lonely, servant, just trying to make it, to the next day. So thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak. I mean, it's always a pleasure, and I like being able to speak to the next generation, because I'll never forget what it was like being able to want to go to law school, getting in law school, graduating law school in Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, and now practicing law. So I would never forget that, and I would never be too big to be able to get back and be able to touch the next person. So I know you're gonna do the same thing too. We're gonna look back on this podcast,
Yeah.
like, man, what? This was crazy. So looking forward to that full circle moment. You'll have a lot of those pretty soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. So, our star question that I cannot forget on my own show, Lord Jesus. What is something somebody should have told you about either being a lawyer, law school, anything that we talked about today?
Something somebody should have told me, or something I wish somebody would tell me.
Something you wish they would have, should have, could have.
Gotcha. That's a good question. So, one thing I wish someone should have told me was, I think I said it earlier, it's honestly really not about how smart you are. It's really more so about how serious you are, and how much you really, how bad you really want it. Because at the end of the day, when it came to me going to law school, it really just came down to grit, how bad I really wanted it. When I
Mm-hmm.
really decided I wanted to go in big law and try to get that internship, it's how it came down how bad I really wanted it, right? Because I had to be top 10% of my class. I had to stay up until 12, every night, right?
Wow.
Same thing with me going into, working where I'm at right now. I had to go out and seek. I had to reach out to these partners 4 or 5 times before they even gave me an opportunity to work. Right. Same
Yes.
thing when it was when I was working with one of the biggest sports entertainment, attorneys. Same thing. It's just how bad do you really want it, and there's nothing too far out the realm for you. But it just comes down to you being able to put yourself in those situations and building, your own platform, right? And so you're doing that right now. Build your own platform and don't take any handouts for the most part. But you can't do it by yourself. But go out and go get it, because I'm telling you, if you wait for things to come, it will never happen.
Wow.
But if you actually go out there and go get it, and how bad you really want it, I promise you it'll come to pass if you see it through. You may have some sleepless nights. You may have to go reach out and do some very uncomfortable things, but it will be worthwhile. And I'm grateful that I'm okay with the uncomfortable, because it really made me into who I am today. So yeah, I wish somebody would have told me that. Like, just go out and go get it. How bad do you want it, bro? Because if you want it that bad, you go get it.
Yeah,
It's
that's really
uncomfortable.
good
It's
for
uncomfortable,
sure. Yeah.
but
Something somebody should have told me um is that well, I guess somebody technically did, is that to join the National Pre-Law Bolsa. So that is for people who are not yet law school students. And I've been really blessed to be met with a lot of support in doing that. Like meeting a lot of Black attorneys. That was how I think I ran into you the first time. And then speaking of scholarship, I won a Blueprint scholarship through them. That was like a $3,000 LSAT prep scholarship through them, so it's a great resource. I think it's like $10 for the year. So those that are listening, Google that, look that up. It is just wonderful, because you do need to do these things in community, especially when you're first generation and you don't have family context for what you're trying to do.
I
Um,
have another one. I have another one.
okay, go ahead.
Real quick, people are more willing to help people when they're not already where they want to be. So, for example, let's say you're a
Wow.
law student, or let's say you want to be a law student. I'm going to help somebody way faster that is either in undergrad or that is in law school, rather than somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's an attorney. Not because you're an attorney, but
Mm-hmm.
because we really want to get back, and people don't think that these people want to get back to you. No, if you reach out, they're like, "Oh my God, undergrad is like reaching out because they want to, and
Yeah.
it really is it's not many people that do it because it's intimidating.
Yes.
But they're more willing to help you because you're so young, and they see the grit and the power of, like, how bad you really want it in your eyes. Because nobody really does that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that, they'll be willing to sit down with you, meet with you, do all that, and that's gonna unlock. Always get the relationships early, because they're gonna be willing to help you earlier rather than later.
That is
So,
very
yeah,
good and very true. And I think too, for me, it's you have to be willing to move past like being uncomfortable, because like I went to the Bolsa convention, the Southwest Bolsa convention, a couple years ago, and there's like, I think I was like the only one that wasn't like a law school student. And if you've been listening, I've been working on this a long time, so it can be a little challenging if you let it, to go into these rooms. But I definitely agree with that. So look, I'll keep doing what I'm doing
yeah,
and
yeah.
keep meeting the people that are going to help me along this path and help others as well. Thank you so much for joining. If you all are listening, this has been another episode of the Somebody Should Have Told Me podcast, where we talk about our convictions, our career, and our coins. And with that being said, as of this week, I have just created a Patreon, which we are going to be calling the C Suite. I'm very excited about that. So click the link in the show notes to join the C-suite, and we'll be putting some exclusive content in there and some behind the scenes things. And until next time, I love you all.